And I remember sitting in the emergency room, and there was a cross actually above the door. And I remember looking at it with tears coming down my face and saying, "Why, God? Why would you do this?"
Hi, I'm Olivia Figuered, and thanks for tuning into my podcast, where I share teachings and testimonies designed to inspire you to reconnect with God and overcome life's challenges. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by the busyness and distractions around you, this is a place where you can rediscover the peace and purpose and power that's inside of you. Well, hi, everyone, and I'm excited to introduce to you Julie Kennedy, who joins us today to share her heartfelt journey of surrender and faith. And what I love about Julie's story is that she is currently walking through her testimony, and I believe she will inspire you with her experiences of holding on to a promise while trusting that God is preparing her for the miracle ahead. And before we get started, I would just love to ask that if you want to hear more of this kind of faith-building, inspirational content, please remember to subscribe, like, follow, and share this podcast. Your support is encouraging. So with that, let's dive in and let's meet Julie. So thanks, Julie. Thank you for taking time out of your day and being here to share about what you're currently walking through. And what I admired most when you and I were talking about this is that you have the courage right now to share something that it's a provision that hasn't been given to you yet, but you're holding on to the promise. And I think that takes a lot of courage. So maybe you can start and share with the audience, where were you? Let's go back in time. Maybe a little bit about what you do for a living. I know you're in the health field, and just kind of a little bit about your background.
Okay. So I am a personal trainer and an integrative health practitioner, and I love health, everything about health. And there was a part of it that I almost took full control of it. I wanted to almost get the recognition. And so backstory, I was very worldly. With my sage and rocks and worshiping everything other than the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know any different because I never went to church. I never grew up religious or whatever, in not really knowing God, not having a relationship with God.
Right.
I always knew pray and all of that, but I didn't understand it.
Right, knew of God, knew that this was the earth and the healthy things of God, but that was maybe the limit of it.
Yeah, I understood,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have a relationship. So me and my husband got married. We're trying to get pregnant, and I had a lot of health issues.
And this was how long ago?
This was 2019.
Okay.
And so a lot of hormonal issues. And I went and I was just you know what? There's a God. And I'm going to just keep praying because I had implants,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to get them out. I wanted an explant. And through that process, I just remember every morning I would wake up and just be like, God, please help me get these out. I need these out of my body.
And you were feeling that because just health in general, because you thought that might help you with getting pregnant?
So I really thought I just truly just wanted to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I really just wanted to be healthy. In the back of my mind, of course, I'm like, maybe this baby doesn't want all these toxins in my body,
Mm-hmm.
So I really just wanted to be the healthiest version of myself.
Sure.
And I did have a feeling that maybe that was hindering me from being able to get pregnant. And so I went, and one day, all of a sudden, I just had this thought to look up this certain La Jolla Cosmetic Surgery Center.
Okay.
And I looked up, and they had a doctor that just started there, specializes in explants, and he was taking on new patients. It was literally God answered my prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
found you the person.
yes. And I was just praying for that because I kept looking, and, I couldn't find anybody. And so made an appointment, got my explant, went through that whole process. But during that process of getting back to the body God
Design.
Yes. As I'm walking through getting my explant, it was more, I started to hear from God. Like I started to really feel him push me in that direction and learn to love my body the way God made me. Because that was something I struggled with, is body image issues and body dysmorphia. And, I got to the point where I don't care what anybody thinks, because God made me perfect. And so went through the explant. And I was recovering.
When was this?
So this was 2001.
Okay. So now we're a few years into it. Okay.
So it's been a few years.
Yeah.
A lot of work has been done.
Right.
So I got the explant and I was healing and I felt really good. I started getting my health back and everything started regulating. And of course, we're trying to get pregnant. I'm thinking, yes, okay, this is it. I finally feel good. Like I can get pregnant. I can hold a baby. And I remember standing in my kitchen and God saying, go to church. And I was like, I feel like you could tell me what you need to tell me here.
Right.
And he's like, go to church. I have a message for you. And I was like, okay, sure. So I called my friend.
I'm going to stop too, because I've been asking people this question. There's a lot of people I think that are listening, and I'm hoping through this podcast and guests like yourself that we can help open people up to going to God for things again. So how do you, when you hear God, how does that come through to you?
So a lot of people ask me that actually. It is a very soft, like it's not like it is a knowing, but it's a soft voice.
Yeah.
Like I hear it. It's not the,
like, is it audible hearing or more like a feeling, an impression?
No, I hear it.
You do.
Yeah. Like I hear the words. It's almost like an intuition. Like the first thought that comes to your mind when you're like, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Like
that would have taken some thinking to do.
Exactly.
And it didn't come from that.
Exactly. Okay. And so where I understand where our own mind, like you know your mind, because it's very nagging, it's very like aggressive. That's where I feel like the fear thoughts and when the enemy comes in, those negative thoughts, like those thoughts. But God is just this reassuring, calm message that I hear. And it makes it like in my body, I feel very at peace with it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I hear.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone else could be.
I don't know. Different. Yeah. I think that's a question that I like to now ask, because I think other people hear, oh, I heard God say that. And then they're like, well, I don't hear God. And some people I do hear something audible. I don't. It's more like an impression or a feeling, but it is what you say. It's not from my own head. And there's something peaceful about what comes up. Like, I know that that's a nudge, it's just deeper than that. So anyhow, I didn't mean to get off course, but I just think it's important as people are listening to just start to be in tune with that little whisper, whether it's audible or an impression, and trust it. So,
and I have noticed if it is God, it's going to keep coming up.
Yeah.
He's going to keep being like, hey.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a very gentle nudge. It's not aggressive.
Yes. Okay. So you're standing in your kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like God tells you, go to church. I have a message for you.
Yeah. So I didn't understand it, of course, because we don't understand most of the things that God is asking us to do. It's called faith. So I call my friend. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to church with you tomorrow. And she's like, what? Because I was very anti, don't need to go to church. I can hear God already. Like, I'm good. So I go to church, service is over. A lady comes up to me and she just like starts talking to me. I have no idea who she is. And she's like, oh, how are you? Are you married? Do you have kids? Do you want babies? Like all this stuff. And she just saw this look in my eyes, like tears came to my eyes. Cause I'm like, yeah, but I've been trying to get pregnant and we just can't. And she's like, let's go pray. And so I go, this lady prays over me. And I just remember her saying, you still have work to do. And in my mind, I felt so defeated because I thought I did all the work.
Yeah.
But I didn't do the work through the Lord. It was my work. And that was my message. God finally gave me that message of, you've done all you can do. Hand it over to me. And she's like, you do have a baby. it is on its way, but you still have work to do. And I was like, okay.
And at the time when she's telling you this, did you grasp that like you hadn't done the work? You didn't allow God to do the work in you? Or were you still at the point where you're like, I've already done it all. This is confusing to me.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah. I was very confused because I'm like, more work? Like, oh my gosh, how much more do I have to do? Because, I did the inner child work, and I healed from like parent trauma and friend trauma.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, so I know, what is some of the work that you've done to go on that path? I mean, I know you're very health conscious and very much about the body, but let's speak a little bit to all that you did do.
So I ended up going to therapy in 2019, and I learned about my inner child. So I didn't understand that. I thought, okay, well, who am I supposed to talk to? Like, I'm not a child anymore. I'm an adult. But there is, when trauma happens in your body, you almost like hold on to that inner child in that moment. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times when our adult self gets triggered, our inner child responds.
Right.
And through that, I had to work on that because my inner child was running the bus. Like, she was driving the bus. I was in the back seat just letting her cause chaos, really. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of mom wounds, and like sibling stuff.
Yeah.
And so I had to work through that. I had to set boundaries with my family, and I had to heal from a lot of deeper traumas. And I was raped at 13.
I didn't know that.
So that one was a heavy one that I was holding on to. And there was a moment where I actually was able to heal my 13-year-old self that was stuck in that moment of when I was raped.
Yeah.
And it was a moment I like saw her, and it was like I was visually hugging her, and she was sobbing and I was sobbing, and I instantly let go of so much guilt and so much shame, and I was able to finally allow myself to love myself. And that's really what the inner child work is right. Allowing your inner child, that child that is hurt, broken, rejected, or whatever it may feel in the past, your adult self is now able to love that broken child again.
You see it through new eyes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I had to mother myself.
Yeah.
In another sense. Yeah. Like, instead of depending on my mom, and I understand that, we all have those, we need that person, right? We want to feel loved by that person. But if we can't get that love from that person, we have to love ourselves. Mm-hmm. And if we don't love ourselves, then that's just snowballs into a bunch of other
absolutely
trauma and, and triggers. And so with that being said, that is all the work that I did. And so it was a lot.
It was heavy, I can imagine. Yeah. Like you'd probably finish that and you're like, okay, I've released, I'm good.
And that's how it felt. Yeah. I'm like, okay, my womb is healthy, I'm good. And so that is a lot of the work that I already did going into the church and hearing from God. But then again, I wasn't doing any of this with the Lord's help.
Right.
I wasn't asking him for help, which I know for a fact he was guiding me through all of this.
Sure.
He was 100% holding my hand through all of this. But now I'm in a place of giving all of this to him and giving the glory to him, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to get through all of this. And he really, truly was the one that was giving me the strength while I have been healing. And so we, as in myself and my inner child, have done a lot of work. So fast forward, I heard God, you still have work to do. I was like, okay, we're doing it. We're going to do the things. And I started going to church. I started reading my Bible. I got another pastor that prophesied over me, pulled me out in the middle of the service, and he called me out because I struggled with ovarian cysts, and they were telling me I had a tumor on my left ovary and I needed to get my ovary taken out, and it was a whole thing, and I refused, and that's how I ended up in the holistic world.
Right.
And he just randomly was on stage saying his message, and at the end he's like, I have to call on somebody. And he literally said, like, there's a lady in this audience that's trying to get pregnant. She has a tumor on her left ovary. It's benign.
Wow.
She can't get pregnant. She's trying to get pregnant. And I'm like,
oh, I know. What do you do with that, right?
and I was like
Can't
new
get
to the church.
Uh-huh.
So I've never heard anybody do this before. I had no idea. And I'm sitting there just looking around. Like, what? I'm getting all
Were you by yourself at the time?
I was with my husband.
Okay.
That was probably, I think, the first or second time he finally decided to come to church with me too.
He starts running out.
Yeah. He was sitting there looking at me like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Wow.
So he calls us down, and he had me just explain a little bit of my situation, and he prayed over me, and then he prayed over my husband. And
was your husband, did he have like a faith background, or was this all new to him too?
No. So his mom was very, believe in God, pray, similar to mine, but not read the Bible, go to church, any of that.
Not the relationship aspect of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no real true relationship. And I would ask him to come to church with me when I started going. And he was like, I find God in the trees. I can talk to God anywhere. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. You can. I think it meets people where they're at. But at some point, there's other ways that you can be spoken to.
And I believe that by being obedient and doing what the Lord is asking you to do, you hear from him more.
Yeah.
And I was being called to go to church.
Yes.
And so he finally decided to go. I think, like I said, it was like the second time he finally went to church with me. And he gets called down in front of everybody and like prays over.
That's so funny.
But then that was the moment he was like, I'm going every Sunday.
Wow.
Like, I'm a believer, because how did this stranger, he's not even he was a guest pastor. He wasn't even our pastor. How did he know?
Because this was a different church than the one you originally went to, where the person pulled you aside or is it the same one? Remember, somebody pulled you aside, prayed for you. Did you share any of like the cyst on your ovary? None of that. Okay.
I never even told
so nobody knew
about that.
Okay.
No, yeah. And I didn't have any friends in the church. They knew nothing. And so that was my moment. My husband's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, you have a baby on the way. Like, I feel it. And everyone's always like, it's a boy, it's a boy. And I'm like, I've actually seen my baby.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened. And then we ended up, what was it? It was probably, I don't know the dates. We ended up getting pregnant.
Mm-hmm. This was within the last year.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm still raw and real in the whole healing situation. But, so yeah, I got pregnant last October.
Mm-hmm.
And, you finally feel like God answered your prayer.
Right.
And that's how I felt. And then I ended up miscarrying the baby at 11 and a half weeks. And that moment, I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand because God promised me this baby. Everyone prophesied over me for this baby. There was so much like prayers around this baby. And I finally got pregnant and I'm like, yes, I got my prayer. But then I started to kind of like fade away. And I felt like I got my
fade away from
the
God.
Lord. Yeah. Like I got
what I wanted.
Exactly. I got what I wanted. And now do I really start to put in the work? I got it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like a conscious thing.
Right.
It was 100% a subconscious thing. I didn't even know that I was doing it.
I can imagine. I mean, we're human and you're excited. And then you're like, all your momentum is probably in going into this, baby and what you're about to experience. So yeah, it wasn't, again, doing it with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then there was, so I kind of just was sitting in my miracle and I was excited and happy. And I ended up miscarrying at 11 and a half weeks, which was absolutely devastating because I thought like we were almost at we're almost at that finish line, like first trimester, and I remember sitting in the emergency room, and there was a cross actually above the door. And I remember looking at it with tears coming down my face and saying, why, God? Why would you do this? And I remember walking into the emergency room, I looked at my husband and I was like, I can't handle this if I'm miscarrying. Like, I'm not going to be able to get through this. Like, I've dealt with enough trauma in my life. I can't do this. And apparently God said, you're stronger than you think you are, and you can get through this, but with my strength. And that next morning I woke up,
It gives me chills.
still in disbelief, like this baby is actually like not even here. This is before I even like physically miscarried, because they sent me home from the hospital and they're like,
There was no heartbeat in
here's some
yours?
pain pills. Yeah, the heartbeat. It actually died at 9 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I didn't miscarry until 11 and a half.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they didn't have anybody there to do like a DNC or anything. So they just sent me home with some pain pills and said, have fun. And it was New Year's Eve.
Oh.
So they're like, we don't have anybody. Just, go home and here's some pain pills. And if it doesn't pass by Tuesday, call somebody. I was like, thank you.
Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Not a kidney stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home and
I'm sorry.
I ended up waking up that next morning, and I just remember hearing God say, do not pull away from me, come closer to me. It was so vivid. The voice, the feeling. And I just remember standing on the front porch being like, okay, God,
Yeah.
but I can't talk to you right now.
Yeah.
Like,
So rightly so.
I didn't have words for him.
Yeah.
So I was texting all of my friends saying, please pray for me because I have no words to pray. I don't even know what to say. I'm just broken. And ended up miscarrying on my bathroom floor. And that was probably it was very physically painful, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but it was so emotionally painful. I didn't understand it. And I think that was the hardest part. And so coming out of recovering from the miscarriage, I just dove in. I dove deep. I read my Bible almost all day.
It's like you're trying
Every
to
day.
find understanding to this. And I get it.
Yeah. And I ended up reading the book of Job because I was like, this guy's been through it and he had faith. Like, I heard about it and I was like, I'm just going to read it. It was very dark. It was definitely it was a hard book to read, especially going
and
through
not
it.
and not only hard to read, but it is actually just hard to read because it's I remember when I tried to read it, the same thing. It was like, what does this all mean? Sometimes there's chapters in the Bible that are certainly like that and a little bit more difficult than others, but the overall message is there, but the nitty gritty to it all is a little difficult.
It was a lot. Yeah. But I was like, I'm gonna be this. Yeah. I'm gonna be like Job. Like, no matter what, you cannot bring me down. And I know so it goes two sides of it where I feel like, okay, enemy, you think you're going to get me. You're not. Like, I'm very stubborn. And I'm one of those that's like, oh, so you're going to try to bring me down. Watch me fight.
Right.
So through this process of the miscarriage and healing, and I have just dove into the Lord. I have been so obedient to the point where this is how I tell my husband all the time. I was like, how I feel right now is where like God is driving and I'm in the passenger seat and he's just like, okay, we're going to go to this destination. And I know how to get there. We can just, make a left and a right, but he's taken me on a detour and I'm sitting here in the passenger seat like, okay, we should have made a left. Why are you going right? And
just trusting.
But trusting.
And like, resting.
Yes. And what I am learning is while you're on this detour, it's more beautiful. Even though it is more painful, there is beauty in it. And there's lessons in it. And
it's rooting you.
Yes. And I I know that this was God's test for me and my husband to see our faith and to see, like, because I know this baby has a big purpose.
Yeah.
He's got a light. There's something in this kid. But I feel that so deeply that I know for a fact that God needs me to be so armored in him to be the mama for this baby.
I love it.
And
I love that.
that is really where I'm at right now because I'm not pregnant. I'm truly still re-regulating my hormones and my emotions. Yes, I still cry every time I start my period because it sucks.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of raw, real emotions from the miscarriage, but prime example, yesterday I was on my way to work bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
To God. And I'm just like, God, I can't do this anymore. I need you to give me strength. And without him, I don't think I would have been able to get through this. And without my husband standing in the gap when I wasn't able to pray. And his faith has grown tremendously. Our house has, like, even just with my stepdaughter, we're like teaching her how to pray. And those aren't things that we had in our house. Like, she's 13 now and she's like, why are we praying?
Yeah. Was that awkward for you guys in the beginning, or did it feel natural? Because just to turn your household around and start doing those practices. I imagine she was going, what's going on?
100%, especially now that she's older. It's not like she's 5 where we're like,
right.
No, it was very awkward for all of us. I mean, I'm not going to lie, because I was over here saging the house, not too long ago, years ago. Now I'm over here anointing the house. And she's like, what? I'm like, we don't do that anymore. We do this. We bring the Lord in. So it was very awkward. And I mean, till this day, like, we try to get her to pray. She has like her few little things she says, but I don't mind because we're planting the seed and we're growing her faith. And in that, like, our household, because it sounds bad. I don't want to say I needed this miscarriage. I don't like to say that.
I know what you mean.
But
it served a purpose.
Yes. I needed it for my growth. And I needed it because I needed to learn how to lean on the Lord.
Yeah.
For the painful, traumatic moments in my life. Because, like I said in the beginning, I did all the work. I was the one that, like, took it all upon myself. And I don't think I would have been able to get through this on my own.
Yeah.
Without him. And he knew that.
Yeah.
And so I just know in this process where I am right now that the promise is coming. And I am able to sit in peace with it. I don't get triggered by people that are pregnant anymore.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I don't get triggered by that anymore because I have a deeper peace knowing that God is going to keep his promise. He does. Like, it is finished, right? Yeah. Like, we know this and I know this. And now I have this feeling of I'm here to help other women. I don't want to sit here and dwell on my on my story or on my, struggles. I want to turn it around, make it a testimony for other people to say, while I'm in the struggle, there is strength through the Lord.
Yeah.
And no matter what you're praying for, God hears you. And it is finished. He knows. And just finding peace in that. And I think with just, working through everything that you have to go through to, like, just find, I don't even know how to say it, but just, like, there is
to get to that place.
Yeah. Like, to get through, like, to have that perseverance, just to, like, and to be able to sit there and be like, I'm at peace with this. Because I know it's coming.
Yeah.
because I trust the Lord.
Yeah. I mean, that is true faith and exactly what it is. You and I were talking before the podcast, and it's not to put a shame to all the work that you did in your own life, because that all serves a purpose, but it's almost like we have things backwards a little bit, like, and don't get me wrong, we got to eat the right foods, and yes, I understand that, and we have to take care of our bodies, and we have to, if you want to sage the house, or enjoy nature, all of these things. But there's so much of that, now it's like, oh, don't have your cell phone near you, don't get to, there's so many things to worry about, and we can get so caught up in those things. And all it's doing is taking us further away from like the essence of who we are, who we were created to be, and who the strength is that's within us. And so it serves a purpose. Like, the earth wasn't created not for a purpose, but we have to get this spiritual side right first and lead and live with that, and let the other stuff follow. So it's like you were always in that driver's seat, and now you've just learned to sit back and appreciate that work that you've done, but turn it over and let him take the lead alongside with you.
I really do believe that. And I think that once your heart posture is in the right place, and that is with the Lord, and you just have this overall sense of peace in your life, no matter what. Even if there's days where you're like, I don't know nothing. Yeah. But he does. Yeah. So, okay. Yep. Like, you just feel good. And it's like for me, it's when, like, when we go on road trips, I trust my husband. He's driving. I'm on.
Yeah. It's true. It's the same concept.
And that's how I feel. Like, I know that the Lord has me, like, and I know when he asks me to do something, I'm going to do it out of obedience because of how well he has taken care of me. Yeah. Even though I didn't even know to give him all the glory in the beginning of my journey. I didn't know that. But now everything I do is
unto the Lord.
100%. Yeah. It is all him.
Yes.
So.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say this, but that's kind of why I named this podcast The Peaceful Presence. And I mean, it just kind of came to me one day. I'm like, oh, I like it. But, you've know a little bit on my story and with my sister, and it was an experience and a journey for her, of course, but also for me. And I didn't realize that until afterwards. And when she had passed away, I remember just feeling so confused, because this was not the miracle that, we had been hoping for. But there was a peace with it. And I don't want to say that in a bad way either. I went through a miscarriage as well, and there was a lot of confusion and hurt, and know what you walked through. And, but at the end, there was some sort of peace. And so I think when we learn to trust and give it to God and go, okay, what are we trying to teach me through this? And keep going, keep pressing forward. It only can get better, and stronger. So,
and I think the strength is the lesson.
Yeah.
Like, but leaning on his strength.
Yeah.
And there's days when you feel like you don't have the strength, talk to him, ask him for it, because he will give it to you.
Yeah.
And it's wild. Hard to explain, but there's days I wake up every morning, I sit with him, and that is a non-negotiable now. I used to, it's like
get on your phone or yep, I know.
And I used to, wake up or like have to go work out right away. And I'm like, no,
start my day with God.
Start my day with God. And it has been, just the abundance, like with every aspect of my life. And I don't know, I wouldn't. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, because even my Instagram page, I used to be like, help, 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 which I definitely am still.
Right.
But now there's like an aspect of God in there. And I think there's some people that are like, what's going on?
It's like the 13-year-old daughter, like, what's going on?
Yes. Like, it's true. Cause I'm just like, give it all to the glory of God. Like, it's just, but I haven't really, I've shared my testimony and stuff like that, but not to the extent of this.
Yeah.
Where people really can understand the depth of what God has brought me through.
Well, I have to say I love every bit of your story, and I think it's even more powerful that you are willing to share this without having, the manifestation in the physical sense of what your of your baby yet, but you just are resting in the peace and the promise of knowing that it's coming. And that's bold and courageous, and I love it.
Thank you.
And then just also to be so raw with what you're feeling, and even just the reality of I'm still going through the days of the tears, and that's okay. But somebody is walking with it, walking through it with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a beautiful testimony in the making.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story,
Of
and
course.
thank you for being here and encouraging other people listening that are going through, anything similar, any struggle of their own, where to turn their eyes.
Yeah, because you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot better when you do kind of give up a little bit of that control and trust. And, when you get to the other side, you can look back and see why things maybe played out the way that they did and have a different understanding about it all.
Mhm.
So,
And I definitely had a spirit of control
mhm.
over me that I had to break off. There's a lot of strongholds that I had to break off too,
Yeah.
going through this process, and a lot of deliverance. So that's a whole nother aspect of the story, but deliverance and the enemy getting mad.
Mhm.
The enemy got very mad when I started turning to the Lord.
Well, and I also love what you say, because I think of it kind of the same way. People say the devil, Satan. I don't get caught up in that. I do kind of refer to it as the enemy, and it's those thoughts that come into our mind, and they don't serve us. And it could come from our own selves, it could come from somebody else. But when we play into that and we give into that, that obviously that's taking us away from our true source and power.
Exactly. And so and I didn't understand it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did have to have I had a few moments of deliverance.
Yeah.
But now I don't even give, like, I have one little like weird thought and I'm like, rebuke.
Yeah.
No, I don't have time for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Well, anyway,
yeah.
well, thank you again for sharing your story. And I hope that you found today's story inspiring. And if you again want to hear more content like this, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day, everyone.